In the crimson hush of a dying sunset over the endless Texas plains, where the wind carried the faint echo of buffalo hooves long vanished, a lone Comanche warrior knelt before a woman he scarcely knew. His name was Cale, Alpha of the last wandering band of his people, his body etched with the scars of battles fought not for glory, but for survival. Blood seeped from a wound in his side, a Comanche arrow, traitor's mark, from his own kin who had turned to the white man's firewater and forgotten the old ways. He was 30 summers old, yet his eyes, dark as midnight rivers, held the weariness of centuries. Before him stood Alara, a settler's widow, her hands calloused from tilling soil that wasn't hers, her heart a fragile vessel cracked by loss. She had found him collapsing at the edge of her modest cabin, half dead under the pecan tree that whispered secrets to the stars. Now, as the horizon bled orange into purple, Cale lifted his gaze and spoke words that would bind their fates like vines in a storm. Would you carry my seed and be mine? Not a plea of lust, but a desperate prayer for legacy, for the blood of his line to endure when his breath failed. Alara froze, the tin cup of water she offered trembling in her grip. The air between them thickened with the scent of sagebrush and impending rain, a scent that reminded her of her late husband, Tom, who had dreamed of this land before fever claimed him 2 winters past. She was 28, her auburn hair streaked with the silver of grief, her blue eyes sharp as the flint she used to spark her hearth. In the white man's world, she was an outsider twice over, a Boston orphan shipped west to marry a stranger, now widowed and scraping by on cornmeal and hope. The Comanches were ghosts in settler tales, fierce raiders who stole horses and hearts, vanishing like smoke. Yet here was one, raw and unraveling, asking not for her body in the heat of night, but for something deeper, a vessel for his future, a mother to the son he would never raise. Her mind raced with the impossibility, to bear a child of the enemy, to weave Comanche blood into her fragile lineage. But in his voice, cracked like parched earth, she heard not demand, but surrender. Why me? She whispered, her voice a thread in the wind. Cale's lips curved in a ghost of a smile. Because you alone saw me as man, not monster. And in your eyes, I see the kindness that could save us all. The days that followed blurred into a tapestry of unlikely alliance, stitched with threads of necessity and the quiet bloom of understanding. Alara nursed Cale in the shadow of her cabin, the one-room sanctuary of rough-hewn pine that Tom had built with dreams of a family that never came. She boiled willow bark for his fever, pressed cool cloths to his brow, and shared her meager stew of rabbit and wild onions. Cale, too weak to hunt, taught her the Comanche songs of healing, low chants that rolled like thunder over the hills, invoking the spirits of earth and sky. In the flicker of lantern light, they spoke of worlds apart. He told of the great hunts under Puha, the life force that bound warrior to horse to wind, of how his band had once numbered in the thousands, guardians of the Llano Estacado, before the bluecoats and broken treaties scattered them like ash. We were the lords of the southern plains, he said one evening, his voice gaining strength as the moon climbed high. But the white man's iron horses brought death on wheels, and our children starved while their bellies swelled with stolen beef. Alara listened, her fingers absently tracing the braided leather band on her wrist, a gift from Tom, now a talisman against loneliness. She shared her own exile, the clipper ship from Massachusetts, the cholera that felled her parents, the arranged marriage to a man whose touch was kind but whose dreams drowned in the dust. I came here for freedom, she confessed, but found only chains of my own making. As Cale mended, the plains seemed to conspire in their fragile peace. Deer grazed unafraid at the cabin's edge, and the pecan tree dropped its nuts like offerings from the ancestors. Yet beneath the calm, shadows gathered. Whispers from the nearest trading post reached Alara's ears via a passing freighter, Comanche raiders sighted, vengeance brewing for a settler's raid that had burned a village to the ground. Cale's own band, fractured by betrayal, hunted him as a deserter for seeking parley with the whites years ago, a fool's hope that had cost him his wife, taken by smallpox in a quarantine camp. They call me Alpha no more, he admitted one dawn, as they watched the sun gild the horizon. Alpha means the one who leads with wisdom, not the blade. But wisdom is a lonely path. Alara felt a stir in her chest, a warmth she hadn't known since Tom's laughter filled their home. In Cale's stories, she glimpsed the humanity the newspapers denied, a father who carved wooden horses for his lost daughter, a brother who shared his last morsel with elders. And in her care, Cale saw not the pale-faced invader, but a woman whose hands held the gentleness of rain on drought-cracked soil. One crisp autumn morning, as frost kissed the grass like a lover's breath, the unexpected shattered their idyll. Hoofbeats thundered from the east, not the gentle trot of mustangs, but the relentless gallop of cavalry. Elara spotted them first from the porch, 6 blue-coat soldiers, dust-caked and grim, led by a captain whose mustache bristled like a porcupine quill. They'd tracked reports of a renegade Injun, to her claim, their rifles glinting like accusations. Cale, sensing the tremor in her step, rose from the hearth where he sharpened his knife. "Hide me," he urged, but Elara's heart rebelled. To betray him now would be to bury the spark of trust they'd kindled. Instead, she stepped forward, arms outstretched, her voice steady as the Rio Grande. "He's no renegade. He's wounded, under my protection. Take him, and you take me too." The captain sneered, his eyes raking her form. "Protection? Ma'am, you're out here alone with a savage. Likely he's bewitched you." But Cale emerged then, hands raised, his presence a quiet thunder. "I seek no fight," he called in halting English, learned from captured scouts. "I seek only life, for my people, for hers." The standoff stretched taut as a bowstring. The soldiers encircled them, murmurs rippling like wind through cottonwoods. Elara's mind flashed to the title of a tattered Bible story Tom had read her, The Good Samaritan, a stranger's mercy defying tribe and tongue. In that moment, profound realization dawned, she was no longer the widow clinging to ghosts, but a bridge between worlds, her choice a seed of something greater. The captain, swayed perhaps by her unyielding gaze or the weariness in Cale's frame, relented with a grunt. "We'll take you to Fort Worth for questioning, warrior. But if you run, it's your scalp we nail to the post." As they bound Cale's wrists with rope rough as regret, Elara pressed a small pouch into his palm, pecans from the tree, wrapped in a scrap of her apron. "Remember me," she whispered. His fingers closed over hers, a promise unspoken, "and you, my seed's guardian." The weeks that followed were a crucible of longing and resolve. Elara rode to the fort under escort, her testimony a fierce shield against the tide of suspicion. In the dim barracks, amid the stink of tobacco and unwashed wool, she pleaded Cale's case, a man of peace, betrayed by his own, seeking only to preserve his line. Whispers spread among the enlisted men, tales of her bravery, the settler witch who tamed a Comanche. But deeper still, in the quiet of her rented room above the saloon, Elara wrestled with the warrior's plea. To carry his seed meant defying the laws of God and man, inviting scorn from neighbors who already eyed her as half-wild. Yet in the dead of night, as coyotes howled their ancient laments, she envisioned a child with Cale's raven hair and her own stubborn fire, a living testament to what crossed divides could birth. Selflessness, she realized, was not the absence of fear, but its conquest. One stormy eve, as thunder rattled the shutters, she slipped into the fort's makeshift jail, bribing a guard with her last silver dollar. Cale, gaunt but unbroken, met her eyes through the bars. "Go back," he urged. "This path leads only to sorrow." But Elara leaned close, her breath mingling with his. "Sorrow is the soil where hope grows deepest. I will carry it, for you, for us." Their union was a sacrament of shadows, forged in the flicker of a stolen candle, tender and urgent as a prayer unanswered. No vows exchanged, only touches that spoke of futures imagined and fears laid bare. In the afterglow, as rain drummed the tin roof like impatient fingers, Cale traced the curve of her belly, already whispering possibilities. "Our son will know the songs of both worlds," he murmured. "He will be Alpha in his own right, not of war, but of weaving." Elara nodded, tears salting her smile, the weight of their pact a mantle both heavy and holy. But dawn brought the turn that would test their fragile bond, word from the plains that Kale's band, inflamed by rumors of his capture, planned a desperate raid on the fort, a suicide charge to free their fallen leader or die in the trying. Messengers, half Comanche scouts turned sympathizers, rode hard to warn her. Ilara's heart clenched like a fist. To warn the soldiers would doom Kale's people, to stay silent would invite massacre. In that crucible, humanity's power revealed itself, not in grand gestures, but in the quiet choice to honor the other's soul above one's own. Ilara rode through the night like a fury unchained, her borrowed mare's flanks lathered white under the relentless moon. The plains unfolded before her as a vast, indifferent sea, dotted with the skeletal arms of mesquite that clawed at the stars. Behind her lay Fort Worth's false sanctuary, its walls a cage of good intentions gone sour. Ahead, the flickering campfires of Kale's band, a constellation of defiance on the edge of oblivion. She had slipped from the fort undetected, her mind a whirlwind of strategies born of desperation. To reach the warriors before blood soaked the earth, to plead for peace in a tongue not her own, this was madness, yet kindness had always been her quiet rebellion. As the first gray light of pre-dawn kissed the horizon, she crested a rise and beheld them, 30 souls, ragged and resolute, their painted ponies stamping the frost-kissed ground. At their center sat the betrayer, Tano, Kale's former second, his face a mask of whiskey-scarred rage, eyes burning with the fire of lost pride. The camp fell silent as Ilara approached, her silhouette a pale ghost against the paling sky. Whispers slithered like serpents, pale witch. Kale's harlot, ponies whinnied, and hands drifted to knife hilts. Tano rose, broad as an oak, his braids adorned with eagle feathers plucked from the graves of foes. "What devil sends you here, white woman?" he growled, his English laced with venom. Ilara dismounted, knees trembling but chin high, the pouch of pecans still warm in her pocket, a talisman of the man they both claimed to honor. "Kale sends me," she lied with the conviction of truth, her voice carrying like a hawk's cry. "He bids you turn back. The fort is a trap of iron and deceit. Ride north to the canyons, there, regroup, heal. Vengeance is a thief that steals tomorrow." Laughter barked from the warriors, harsh as crow calls, but Tano's gaze narrowed, probing for weakness. In that suspended breath, Ilara saw the fractures in their unity, young braves with hollow cheeks, elders clutching grandchildren too small for the saddle, women whose eyes mirrored her own quiet grief. They were not monsters, but mirrors, reflections of a humanity starved for understanding. An unexpected turn unfurled then, swift as a rattler's strike. From the shadows emerged a girl, no more than 12 winters, her face a delicate echo of the woman Kale had lost to fever. "You smell of him," she said, stepping forward, her small hand clutching a wooden horse carved with Kale's deft touch. "The Alpha, does he live?" Ilara knelt, meeting the child's wide eyes, and in that gaze found her anchor. "He lives, little one. And he dreams of you riding free, not chained in death's shadow." The girl's name was Lyra, Kale's niece, orphaned twice over by the white man's plagues. Her simple faith pierced the camp's armor, rippling doubt through the ranks. Tano faltered, his bluster cracking like dry clay. Lies from a settler's tongue, he spat, yet his voice wavered. Ilara seized the moment, unfolding the pouch to reveal the pecans, symbols of the tree that had sheltered Kale, nuts that held the promise of new growth. "Eat," she urged, passing them among the circle. "These come from the earth we all share." Kale chose life over blood, wisdom over wrath. Will you dishonor him with slaughter? As the warriors chewed, a profound realization settled over the camp like morning mist. One by one, they lowered their weapons, the fire in their eyes banking to embers of reflection. Tano, last to yield, sank to his haunches, head bowed. "The Alpha spoke true," he muttered. "We fight shadows while our children fade." Ilara's heart swelled, tears tracing paths through the dust on her cheeks. In this act of intervention, she glimpsed the transformative power of one woman's voice, bridging chasms not with force, but with the raw vulnerability of shared pain. They broke camp at her counsel, veering north toward hidden springs where the Comanche could whisper to the wind gods unseen. Lyra rode beside Alara for a spell, her small hand on the mare's mane. "You carry more than pecans, and who is not," the girl said softly. "You carry hope." And in that child's words, Alara felt the first flutter within her, a secret bloom, Kale's seed taking root in the fertile soil of compassion. Word of the averted raid reached Fort Worth like wildfire on dry grass, carried by scouts who marveled at the tale. Kale, freed in the ensuing confusion, his renegade status dissolved by Alara's heroism, was reunited with his band under a fragile truce brokered by the fort's chaplain, a man whose own faith had been tested by the frontier's cruelties. But peace was no panacea. Winter clamped down hard, blanketing the plains in ice that mirrored the chill in settlers' hearts. Rumors swirled, the widow consorting with Indians, birthing a half-breed bastard. Alara returned to her cabin, now a beacon of whispered scorn, her belly rounding with the evidence of her choice. Neighbors shunned her, supplies dwindled, and loneliness gnawed like hunger. Yet Kale came, under cover of night, his presence a balm. Together, they fortified the home. He thatched the roof with buffalo grass, she planted a garden of corn and sage, mingling their worlds in the turned earth. "Our son will till this soil," Kale promised, his hand splayed over her swell. "He will know the bow and the plow, the chant and the hymn." Spring arrived as a reluctant guest, thawing the ground and the grudges alike. An unexpected visitor shattered the isolation, Captain Harlan, the mustachioed officer from the standoff, riding up with a wagon of provisions, flour, salt, bolts of calico. "Heard tell you saved a dozen lives that night," he grumbled, avoiding her eyes. "Including some of my boys. Reckon that earns a mite of goodwill." Behind his gruffness lay a story Alara hadn't known. A Comanche arrow had widowed his sister years back, yet here he was, extending an olive branch wrapped in burlap. Word spread, and slowly, the cabin drew others, settlers curious, Comanche scouts wary. Gatherings formed under the pecan tree, shared meals where English tangled with Comanche, laughter bridging the gaps. Lyra became a fixture, teaching settler children the art of feather weaving, while Alara recounted tales of Boston harbors to wide-eyed braves. Kale, restored to Alpha in spirit if not in name, mediated disputes, his wisdom a lodestone drawing disparate souls. The emotional climax crested on a golden June afternoon, as thunderheads gathered like old gods reconvening. Alara's time had come, labor pains ripping through her like prairie lightning. Kale and Lyra stood vigil in the cabin, the air thick with the scent of boiling water and wild rose petals. Hours blurred into eternity, Alara's cries echoing the wind's wail outside. At the precipice of despair, when strength ebbed like retreating tide, she locked eyes with Kale. "I cannot," she gasped. But he knelt, pressing his forehead to hers. "You are the Earth Mother, fierce as the storm. Carry him, for the kindness that saved me, for the selflessness that mends worlds." In that shared breath, compassion surged like a river breaking its banks. With a final, triumphant push, she birthed their son, a boy with skin like burnished copper, eyes holding the depth of canyons, cries strong as a newborn Mustang's whinny. They named him Tai, meaning, strong one, in Comanche, a name that whispered of bridges built from blood and choice. As the rains fell in grateful sheets, washing the world anew, the cabin swelled with witnesses, Tano clasping Kale's arm in brotherhood renewed, Captain Harlan awkwardly cradling the babe, Lyra beaming as auntie in truth. In Tai's tiny fist, wrapped around Alara's finger, lay the transformative impact, a living emblem of humanity's power to transcend tribal scars. No longer outcasts, they formed the seed of a new community, settlers and Comanches trading stories by firelight, children playing games that knew no borders. Years would test this fragile bloom, droughts of doubt, storms of prejudice, but the root ran deep, nourished by acts of generosity that echoed across the plains. In the quiet evenings, as Tai nursed at Alara's breast and Kale sang lullabies of wandering stars, they would gaze at the pecan tree, now heavy with promise. "We asked for a seed," Kale would murmur, "and planted a forest." Alara, her heart full as the horizon, would reply, "Kindness is the rain that makes it grow." To all who gathered there, warrior and widow, captain and child, the message rang clear. In a world fractured by fear, one selfless choice can mend the unbreakable, turning enemies to kin and despair to dawn. Carry the seed of another, and you carry the future, for in humanity's quiet generosities lies the truest strength, a hope that outlives empires and endures like the endless plains.